Three different modern decks won 3 different RCs this past weekend, which means we might have some shakeups in our modern metagame. 2 in North America and 1 are Europe. There's a lot of things to be looking out for in a turbulent modern format. And I wanted to use this video not only to go over said turbulence in the format, there was a note of that being made in the last banned and restricted announcement, but also try and make sense of this past weekend's competitive modern environment. Look at the decks that are making top 8, look at the ones that are succeeding, and what are the outliers, what's standing true, and what are some of the tech pieces that we are seeing establish themselves in the modern metagame. But before we hop into the video itself, let me know in the comment section down below, what do you believe is secretly the best deck in modern right now? Is it actually the ones at the top with Blink and Amulet, or do you secretly believe something like Yawgmoth or Affinity should be the #1 spot? Sound off in the comment section down below. Let's see where we line up, especially with these tournament results. The modern metagame does have a top deck right now. It is Jeskai Blink, and it's won by a margin at this point. A lot of conversations are being had around if something needs to go out of the Blink deck. The play patterns against it might be frustrating, but I'm not sure if we're there yet, especially in the banned and restricted announcement. They're talking about Amulet Titan potentially seeing some bans due to play patterns, but that would specifically be attacking the infinite combo in it. Now, when it comes to the variety of Blinks that we have, you could argue Blink is actually by and large the best deck in the modern format by almost 20% at this point, because Jeskai Blink is an American style with the 3 colors it's in. Quantum Riddler and Solitudes and Felias and Ephemerates in some combination are going to exist in all of the Blink variants. But when it comes to differentiation, Jeskai Blink uses red with Ragavan and Flage. Esper Blink will use recursive packages like Overlord of the Bailmerk and threats such as Psychic Frog. And the Azorius version, a lot lower right now, will be using some of the energy shell. So you're going to be looking at Ocelot Prides and Guide of Souls to be able to get over top, maybe make a wide board and gain some life for some tempo. The rest of the modern metagame is defined by combo, some mid-range big mana, as well as aggro. Boros mid-range has been the de facto best deck in modern for a very long time, only recently kind of dethroned by metagame pressures out of Edge of Eternities. We see the rise of Affinity and the viability of Amulet rise as Pilot skill grows, alongside Is It Prowess just taking the burn slot, if you will. Burn hasn't been viable for a very long time, especially just the generic life gain that does exist in the modern metagame, the incidental, if you so will. And so Is It Prowess takes that aggro slot, being one of the more affordable modern decks that I always love to point out. And then past that, as I mentioned, Amulet, Affinity, finding a way to take one of the single best threats in Magic, I would argue, in Kappa Cannoneer, and making it viable thanks to the explosive power of something like the Pinnacle Emissary, putting out a bunch of artifacts out on the battlefield to improvise out into. I believe that is, again, in my opinion, the sole reason why Affinity has made its way back up. Domain Zoo has been around for a while. Goryo's Vengeance acting as like a weird mid-range combo deck. So you do have the combo finish, but a mid-range plan outside of that. It has a plan A and B that are in many ways equally strong. Ruby Storm, I'm actually surprised, is able to make its way up above Belcher, but if many decks are going to be prepared for Belcher, especially winning Pro Tour Edge of Eternities just a little bit ago, I think that's a natural piece down. Jeskai Control making its way up in a metagame that is relatively defined is not as surprising. I think the white-red addition to blue is just really powerful, playing a lot of the similar pieces in terms of Jeskai Blink. So maybe it's just Jeskai Blink with a bit more control piece, and it's more so that the Blink package is what's doing well, although it may not be playing completely all the Felias and all that stuff all the time. Gruul Basking Broodscale is going to be that Eldrazi combo deck, whereas Eldrazi Tron or Eldrazi Aggro is going to act as the big mana. So you have Amulet Titan at the top, which is big mana combo. Eldrazi Tron is big mana mid-range, and Gruul Basking Broodscale is a soft variant in the middle where, yes, it is more so Eldrazi combo, but it does have like a value mid-range plan where you play out Glaring Fleshrakers and just play colorless spells and ping your opponents down. You almost don't even need to attack, although incidental attack here and there does matter. The Yawgmoth deck is actually seeing some interesting rises in terms of playability, and notably having a high win rate in one of the RCs that we're going to talk about, including the Badger Mole out of the Avatar set. Badger Mole is making big waves in the standard metagame specifically. Likely might see a bit of a ban, who knows, come next year. but Yawgmoth definitely in everyone's eyes for a new addition in terms of having that new addition and potentially making its way up the ranks. Now let's talk about the first RC. Nathan Goldberg is your winner of SCG Vegas with Amulet Titan. Now, Titan in this metagame, top 8 being Titan, the Is It Affinity deck. Why is this called Is It Metalcraft? I'm just noticing this right now. Why is this called Is It Metalcraft versus Affinity? What? Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I actually thought this was Affinity, but like there's like Quantum Riddler and no... Oh, okay. Yeah, there's no Kappa Cannon here. All right, well, there you go. Turns out the artifact shells are actually pretty good, and Quantum Riddler is a busted magic card. So two artifact style mid-range decks, one definitely way more expensive than the other, Mox Opal being a part of that. And then past that, two Boros energy decks, Espra Blink, Domain Zoo, and Jeskai Affinity taking over the top 8. Jeskai Ascendancy, not Affinity, Jeskai Ascendancy, just be going to like the best mid-range combo, whatever value enchantments ever made in Magic's history. Really what we're seeing here is Affinity being at the top, Boros Energy, a Blink strategy, but Amulet Titan able to make it there as well. Past that, we see a lot of Gorios, Blink, a little bit of prowess. We see parts of the modern metagame alongside pilots with random one-ofs, I would argue, in the Jeskai Ascendancy, Domain Zoo, alongside Is It Metalcraft. So there is room for Pilot Skill to be able to get you there past a whole sea of what you would see in a modern metagame spread. In terms of the Amulet deck itself, we know that classically a lot of people have been frustrated with the Amulet Titan plan because they feel like they can't really interact with it. They don't understand what's going on or how it wins. And especially now, over the past, like, I would say half year to last year, people have been aware of the combo finish in Amulet Titan being the de facto win in Amulet because of many reasons. So you already have the primary Amulet plan. You can just go off with that, where you play an Amulet, you give it haste with something like the Hanwar Battlements, you attack in for a little bit of value, and then you go from there. Now, these lists necessarily aren't too built towards that turn one finish, but you do get an overwhelming level of value by just attacking in with a Titan and getting out a bunch of lands. Now, the key here is that there is a combo win that exists with a 1-2 of Aftermath Analyst. And what I'm going to link down below is actually this Reddit thread that goes over the Aftermath loop specifically. It's a very quick loop, and I think what's taking a lot of time for a lot of people, and the reason people are getting frustrated now, is that the conversations around the Amulet ban are specifically around the time taken to demonstrate the loop. And so what this article does is actually allow you to explain the loop with certain pieces out on the battlefield and how you can explain to your opponent how you can generate infinite mana and the steps done after that to shorten that time so that Amulet doesn't take a ban. I think Amulet will still eat a ban next year, and I think that will be primarily the Aftermath Analyst or part of that loop. But Analyst is like a very weird card to have banned in this, specifically if it's just for Titan. And what I would actually recommend a lot of people do to try and understand this loop, I actually think like this is a good step forward. If you have the resources for it, go play Simic Scapeshift in Pioneer, because Simic Scapeshift in Pioneer actually is a much more simplified version of this combo, but it lacks the complexity because the combo is determined by a set few pieces every time. You don't necessarily have like a good plan B or variety in that plan, and you're going about the same loop over and over and over again. The way the Pioneer decks work specifically is you need an untapped source in something like Spelunking or the Wandering Minstrel. You then have 3 to 4 lands out, and then what you do is you scape shift and you get some combination of 2 Lotus Fields alongside a Portacarfel and another mana. And what happens with that is Lotus Fields enter untap because the untapper, you generate mana off of this, you sack, you let 1 Lotus Field trigger resolve, you sack those, and then you activate the Portacarfel to mill 4 cards and return a creature from your graveyard. Now, you either have a Lumra in hand or you have a Lumra in the graveyard to then have the Lumra return off the Portacarfel or play the Lumra from your hand to return those. And then the Lumra dies and you repeat that process over and over again. Now the Lumra dies specifically to no lands being on the battlefield or you recurring another Lumra thanks to the legend rules. or you can go off with Aftermath Analyst, which requires a bit more mana but demonstrates the same loop. You just sack, return your lands, Port of Karfel, go over and over and over again, and then you win with something like the Thassa's Oracle. Now, Thassa's Oracle isn't available in this deck specifically. This one is winning either with Mill on Ipnu Rivulets, or it's playing a singular copy. It usually does. Oh, it's not. This is very interesting. This one is specifically only winning with Ipnu Rivulet, which I think is vastly incorrect. I would not play a list like this. I understand you got 6th place in a Pioneer Challenge, but I would not play a list like this. I would at least be playing 2 win conditions in this. So you either play a land that enters the battlefield and deals 1 damage whenever it enters, and you can sack that to the Lotus Field, play Lumra, and then get it back over and over again. You just loop that, or you win with Thassa's Oracle. Now, if you were to understand that loop at its basic point, you would be able to understand that the Aftermath Analyst loop in Titan, all you do is you get your Lotus Fields, you sack them, generate net mana over and over again with the Analysts, you return the Analysts, and then what you do is eventually you mirror pool a bunch of times, and mirror pool allows you to pay 5 mana, put a token that's a copy of target creature onto the battlefield, and so you generate a bunch of copies of any creature. Ideally it's a Primeval Titan, and then what you do, because it has trample, it just can't get chumped infinitely. What you then do is you play something like the Hanwar Battlements and you give them haste. So you give one creature haste, you play the Lotus Field again, you sack the Hanwar Battlements to the Lotus Field sack trigger alongside the Lotus Field, recur over and over and over again, give everything haste, attack in for a giant trampling board. That is your Aftermath Analyst loop. Again, I would highly recommend going through this Reddit post and the article alongside trying out Pioneer Sim Escape Shift, because it feels like a much more simplified version of a land-based combo loop that can then be applied onto Amulet Titan. But it's one that, again, I think there are ways to address the time issues and how you can go to time and still take like half an hour and in turns still win the game, but you're taking like a half an hour extra because you don't know how to speak out a loop that you need to like demonstrate or whatever. I think there are ways to shorten this. I still think something gets eaten out of this Titan deck, but while Titan is at the top of the metagame, I as a mill player can't be too upset. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at Daniel Toledo winning at RC in the European Magic Series, Boros Energy up in Antwerp here. Now, of course, Boros Energy in this top 8, and in general in Modern, not surprising that it's able to win. We saw 2 copies in the past top 8 here. Amulet Titan being second means that Amulet Titan potentially could have even won a second one. Now that would have been a title and thumbnail, baby. Ruby Storm, Jeskai Blink, is it Prowess? Boros Energy, is it Affinity? And another copy of Amulet Titan up in the top 8. We see plenty of Prowess, Affinity, Zoo, Combo, Energy throughout the top 16 and top 32 extended, especially with Boros Energy being the top represented deck at 11% in this winning metagame. Another thing I should mention, if we back up completely here, Boros Energy, again, still at 11% at the top of this. It's just being covered by my camera here. But this Boros Energy list specifically, I would argue is pretty tried and true, but there are some interesting pieces. So notably, I haven't kept up with the Boros Energy list in terms of their 3 mana slot that they use for mid-range value. It seems like the argument, generally speaking, is between Seasoned Pyromancer and Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. This list has opted for 3 Season and 1 Fable. I believe that's the argument in general. Do you play one or the other? Or do you play a split? 2 Blood Moons or 3 is usually the choice. They've actually opted for only 1 Blood Moon in the main, which is interesting, and 1 in the side. I would feel like you would need more in a sea of Amulet Titan if that's what you expect, but if you're expecting Blink, I would still feel like that's a thing that you would want in able to like answer these 3 color mana bases. There are a lot of mana bases that you can punish with that, and especially with like only 1 Voice of Victory in the main board, that's kind of interesting considering that there's none in the sideboard. I feel like 2 is kind of stock, but I don't want to speak for the Boros Energy pilots. Again, Daniel is the one that won. Daniel made the great choices. I'm just here to provide small critiques. 4 Flage, 4 Guide, Ragavan, Pride, all that stuff. Like, it's all pretty stock there. The key is the 2 Mana Tides. And the reason I really like this Mana Tide edition is that a play pattern that you're seeing emerge, especially one that we're going to discuss in the 3rd deck, is the idea that decks are tapping out because the Blink decks are able to answer almost anything you can do while doing so. Force and Negation, Subtlety, and the endurances out of other decks, but also Solitudes primarily in the Blink decks. all of these free spells exist in the modern metagame, especially out of prowess. If they're tapped out on their main board, they can maybe cast like a gut shot, not a gut shot, sorry, the +2/+2 that you can cast for a green for Phyrexian mana alongside the lava darts out of the graveyard. There are a lot of cards that you can cast for free in this modern metagame that are seeing high tier, top level main board play. And so when these decks tap out, Mana Tithe is the best deck, or the best card, I should say, to include in the main board of a deck to be able to answer them, especially to steal game ones. Now, Mana Tithe serves a similar purpose to something like Spell Pierce. You, in an open deckless world, can include one Spell Pierce in the main board, and then your opponent always has to play around it in an open deck list. It is a beautiful thing. Now, once you have 2 Mana Tides out, once you use it once in a game 1 scenario, your opponent's going to be aware of it and try and hold up 1 mana, but that's the type of tempo you're looking for. If your opponent is not able to tap out, they're not able to use all their mana efficiently, then something like Mana Tithe is fantastic to be able to tax all spells. They always cost 1 more, and especially in game 1 scenarios, Mana Tithe is a great way to, again, punish those players for tapping out, but also if they are aware of it, maybe they played against you in earlier rounds and know what you have, taxing their mana further. There are going to be decks where this doesn't matter at all. You're going to be playing up against Amulet Titan or something like Tron where they don't matter in the late game. But if you are in the play and you get a white source down and your opponent goes turn 1 as an Amulet player, they get down the Amulet of Vigor, you can Mana Tithe that. That is a pretty big shutout play just for 1 white mana. So again, Mana Tithe, fantastic inclusion in a modern metagame that not only you are not able to punish perfectly, I would argue, with only 1 Voice of Victory and 1 Blood Moon, but you are able to punish them on tempo, and tempo is going to be so big in a deck like this to slow your opponent down, to give you the time you need to establish a Flage, establish an Ajani, plus a Goblin Bombardment, whatever it is, to get the value you need to get over top in that game. Boros Energy still able to do what it needs to do. The last deck that I want to talk about is going to be Owen Turcotte's Win Canadian RC playing Jeskai American Blink. Now, Jeskai Blink is the big boogeyman of the modern format. Top 8 here, we see Jeskai Blink actually at the highest representation at 11.56%, Amulet Titan at 11, other decks at 10, and Boros Energy down at 7. So Canadians don't like playing Boros Energy. Shout out to Canadians. Thank you for not doing that. Jeskai Blink at the top, Boros Energy at 2nd still, Simic Titan, Is It Affinity, Boros Energy, Mono Green Amulet Titan. Okay, just green. Simic Birthing Ritual, Grixis Midrange. That's a whole other deck in and of itself. I would love to take a look through that. But we're seeing a pattern emerge. Blink, Boros Energy, and Amulet Titan. Folks, the modern metagame seems pretty damn defined at the top. You know, you have a big mana combo deck, you have a creature-based mid-range deck, and a creature-based value engine soup deck in the Blink deck. Like, Ephemerate and Felia stay enabling the craziest stuff in this modern metagame. And when it comes to the Jeskai Blink deck, there's a lot happening here. Modern Horizons and Ragavan, Felia, Modern Horizons, Edge of Eternities, the best, arguably one of the best cards out of, if not the best card out of Edge of Eternities. Solitude, Modern Horizons, Teferi feels like Modern Horizons sometimes. Consign, 4 of them in the main board, Modern Horizons, Ephemerate. Again, all of these magic cards, Modern Horizons, the Prismatic Ending, March of All the Worldly Dice, fantastic removal spell. Modern Horizons and Strict Serenade. Fable of the Mirror Breaker feels like it should have been a Modern Horizons card, honestly. Like, the things that I be doing with Fable of the Mirror Breaker in all formats, and that is legal in, is fantastic. As a painter player, whew, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, fantastic magic card. Arena of Glory as well. Folks, this is, alongside Boros Energy, Modern Horizons Soup. It feels like Amulet Titan is like the one deck trying not to do that, but it still does it in a way, like it doesn't have too much Modern Horizons. But when it comes to Jeskai Blink, its package is just working around all of the cards that we got out of these sets. And having Ragavan, arguably the best turn 1 play in the modern metagame that forces your opponent to have the removal. Like, if you're on the play and your opponent is not playing something interactive, it better be something fast, because Ragavan is a insane threat to be able to hit and then untap with 3 mana. Come on now. Then you're playing Flages, then you're playing Quantum Riddler Ephemerates or Consigns. The fact that this deck can play Consign to Memory as an insane magic card. Consign to Memory is both the best and the worst magic card in modern. Hot take. Worst modern card because it is like the most sideboard card, but because it's able to hit triggered abilities in its counter alongside Colorless, it is also the best because there's so many incidental triggered abilities that are insane. Obviously in the Amulet deck, obviously ETBs out of like any deck in the modern metagame. And then the fact that Consign allows you to be at the same time pre-boarded in the main for the Eldrazi matchup. I mean, let me tell you, it's pure masterpiece right there. Basking Broodscale, the Amulet decks, especially when it comes out of Tron, like decks that do sometimes lack the Cavern of Souls, even if they have the Cavern, being able to counter other triggers like the Urza Saga trigger that goes to allow you to look for your Basking Broodscale combo piece in the Bloodchief knife. Being able to counter that Urza Saga trigger, absolutely insane. Consigned Memory is an insane magic card, the most sideboarded card in blue, I would argue, and being able to mainboard it to counter your Solitude Evoke trigger, the Quantum Riddler Warp trigger, the Flage of Escape trigger, all of these things you are able, or not the Escape trigger, but the trigger that makes you sack it if you didn't escape it. All of that gets countered with Consign, so it works for you in your main board, while also countering your opponent's stuff. So if your opponent goes to Consign and you know you're playing Jeskai Blink in the mirror and you know that they're going to consign this, you can then counter, you can consign yourself their ETB. So yes, they get their Quantum Riddler. Yes, they get their Solitude, whatever, but they don't get the ETB effect. They don't get any of that. So again, pre-boarded for the mirror, pre-boarded for everything else, pre-boarded specifically for Eldrazi. Of course, Jeskai Blink is going to be taking it to the top here. This deck is an egregious mashup of the wildest crap in the world, especially when you think of Teferi Time Raveler being put down on the battlefield. Teferi Time Raveler, bounce one of your opponent's key permanents. They can't play it again. They can only play things at instant speed. So it's not just about not playing on your turn, which is Voice of Victory. They just can't play things at instant speed at all. So they can play things at instant speed on their turn with Voice of Victory. They can't do that with Teferi. So you're playing two copies of that. You're playing the Value Engine and Fable the Mirror Breaker that you can just keep blinking. By the way, you don't need to let it flip. And even if it flips, you can then blink it to get it back on its front mode, make another 2/2 Goblin, and then go through the draw modes again. Folks, it's insane. The fact that this deck is at the point where we 4 Consign and only 2 Ephemerate, insane. Absolutely insane. Jeskai Blink is at a wild point. And I'm not sure if anything needs to be banned out of this deck. It's just, this is going to be modern for a little bit. This is going to be the top of modern right now. And these are the play patterns that we have to decide in the comment section down below. And as modern players in general, across all of our content creators and all the games we play, is this the type of modern we want? I'm not exactly sure at this point. I just have to be okay with the fact that Mill is not going to be good in modern for a very long time. Mill needs a new tool. So as a Mill player myself, yes, of course, I'm not going to like modern right now, but I'm an affinity player as well. So I'm an enjoyer of this modern metagame. I'm also a land savant myself, playing Pioneer Lumina combo. So I do want to slowly pick up Amulet Titan. Regardless, there are decks, I think, for everybody here. There are mid-range decks, there are control decks, there are affinity style decks that are aggressive and artifact based. There are combo decks and a good variety of them. There are mid-range combo decks. There's a lot happening in this modern metagame. The type of gameplay that we get and the homogeneity of that gameplay is a whole other discussion. The amount of solitudes, the amount of subtleties, the amount of quantum riddlers in the format, the amount of things that are available across all decks, the things that all decks are doing. That may be the true problem of what's going on in the modern metagame right now. I think the sideboard tech exists. The one-ofs do make a difference, but the modern metagame is both diverse and likely still turbulent and problematic. The gameplay pattern leaves a lot to be desired, but it does allow for a variety. It does allow for you to try different decks, be aggressive while being controlling at the same time. So arguably, modern is in a healthy place. But when it comes to competitive modern, you might actually be able to make a counter argument. At the league level, at the local level, there likely is variety. But at the competitive level, at RCs and everything, at the top of the tippy top, there might just be a problem. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Do you feel like we got a good variety and a good look at the modern metagame right now based on the RCs this past weekend? Are you excited to be able to play modern these next few months before we see a potential change, maybe out of Amulet, maybe out of nothing, whatever it is? What are your thoughts on the modern metagame as a whole?